You guys remember the Power Wheel video? Yeah. Here's some behind the scenes. Just way too unstable. But let's see what we could do if we take this thing apart. Build video now. All right, we're getting rid of the power wheel completely, cutting the front end off and all the parts we don't need. I originally turned a kid's power wheel into something crazy for adults, but it did not work. Too unstable. This video is to show you what we can do if we take it apart and make something crazy like a drift trike. So this is the axle. Big axle. Notch cut out, and then bent 90. I believe it's gonna have to be more of a notch to go 90, so I think it's double of what this width is, which would be 2 inches. I forgot. But anyway, let's go out this, and then we'll see how far this goes. Yes, it was double, so it's 2 inches to get it at 90. After this build video, I will take this trike around my neighborhood and get some opinions from neighbors. Then I will put on some PVCs and we'll drift it. This is pipe I had already that fit these bearings that are commonly used. They're 5/8 inside. I think 1 3/8 outside. So I'm just gonna use what I had here at the house. 6-inch length. And then at the very end of the video, I pull off the PVCs and do some full runs, 0 to 3 second timed data. I have a few different variables, different gear ratio and different phase amps, and Excel graphs. If you would like to see that, that'll be at the very end. What a great battery. If you want to see more of this battery, click to the top right corner. Preparing for the new seat. These are the old chain tensioners. Getting rid of them and gonna install some new ones. When I push pressure with that square tube, it actually makes the weld go straight on. That's very important there. Otherwise, the weld will want to pull the way you're welding. That's why you use that square tube. Get it nice and straight. Here we're just trying to get it level as possible from one end to the other.
The reason I make the axle adjustable, kind of like an ATC or a quad, you know how the back end can move, or even a dirt bike. This motor has so much torque that if you make this move, kind of like the Predator gas-powered stuff, you know how the motor moves, not the back, those produce like nothing, no torque at all. These produce like 5 times or 10 times more torque. So what ends up happening is these will shift over time. So you rather make this move, it's easier to tighten the chain this way. And I can make, I took my original, what I had earlier, like that, and I can take my chain tensioners off here, just like on a motorcycle, and I'll weld something to keep it from coming forward. I'll be pushing it back, just like on a motorcycle. The reason that this is so long, obviously you don't need a chain to go all the way back like that, is instead of making 2, because this pillow block itself is so wide, instead of making 2 of these, it's more accurate just to make one long one and weld it, and it's not going to go anywhere. This is so strong. It's 1/4 inch. All this is 1/4 inch. And then let's just give you an example how this is going to work here.
We got a 1-inch solid axle going through the pillow blocks, followed by a 36 tooth sprocket, then accompanied by 1-inch collars on each side of the pillow blocks, then 1-inch collars for the wheel. Eventually we use 2 1-inch collars for the wheel on each side.
Alright, so I got the chain tensioners here and here, and they're all tightened up to get the chain how I want it and to get the axle straight as I can get it. You look at it this way, and then you tighten this end nut just like a dirt bike end nut there, and then this can't move anymore. Other than that, the only thing to do is tighten the pillow block bolts here. So that's the last to do here.
Making the support beam to actually hold the whole front end up. Here we go with the front end welding to the gooseneck. Making these custom handlebars. I didn't have any, so I had to make the right diameter, and I cut a piece of pipe and welded it to something like this to get it to fit.
Say hi to the camera. We're on YouTube. We're on YouTube. Say hi. You want to say hi? Okay.
Now welding it to the front end.
Installing the front hydraulic caliper. I just took this off of the original power wheel and the little mounts that I used with the right bolt holes. So these would go right in here, and this would be welded right in here like that.
Cutting the frame to fit the foot pegs. adjusting the foot pegs to fit the right direction. Making the mount for the shutoff switch.
Mechanical kill switcher to the brackets. Somewhere like that.
I like to call these rabbit ears, but really it's just supports for the gooseneck to not be able to move left and right. And it makes everything secure.
So now we're wiring up the throttle for a test drive and getting all the wires soldered here, going back to the controller, and then these two open wires here will be one voltage and one power on controller, which will go to a switch to turn on the controller on and off, which here's the bracket for that. And I was going to just put that right around there. So that's how you turn it on and off. So that's what we're doing right now. On and off.
Finishing the last part of the build, putting on grip tape on the foot pegs. You like it?
Damn.
It works? Works nice?
Damn, that thing goes.
120 volts.
That thing pulls. I didn't even go all the way yet with it.
Yeah, I don't blame you because I'm pretty scared to do that myself.
Yeah.
What do you think of this thing?
This thing is like crazy fast.
Tell me what you think of it. Fun?
Yeah, this thing goes. Tell me that's not
Hey,
faster
tell
than
the camera.
30 miles an hour.
Oh, no, that's 50.
Tell the camera.
That's what's going 50, 60 quick status.
I'm telling you, that's faster than 35
Watch, look at
miles
this
an hour.
really real quick.
Well, be careful.
Faster than my car? That thing is souped up. Man, is it controlling it?
Hey, wait, what do you think of this thing? No, you just hopped on it. What,
Amazing. I know.
what is this thing? Who am I?
You're the mad scientist.
What are you?
It's amazing. Well, the guy trying to.
This thing is fucking intense, bro.
120 volts could kill you.
This thing's insane.
What do you think of it?
It's like it's a lot of power between my legs. Dude, it's like
It's short wheelbase,
like a
huh?
superhero.
So how do you?
Like I'm just like it's like a reverse flying dude.
How do you get?
Just ease into it. Ease into it. He did not ease into it. He did not ease into it, this guy.
We don't ease into anything, bro.
Hell no.
Shit, dude, he's not. Holy fuck, dude. Okay, boy, this guy. Alright. Oh, shit. What was that thing, like crazy or what?
It wasn't crazy. Right turns only.
Yeah, it was pretty fucking crazy.
Don't throttle in the turn.
Oh, dude, how come none of you ease into things?
We're gangsters, bro.
Dude, everyone just guns it. Like I said to everyone, just take it easy. No, just go. Everyone just goes.
I like it. I want one. Bro, we all gotta get one.
This is the
You just sold the first 6-pack of these.
Hey, sorry, one more time.
Dude, I just don't want to kill. I just don't want to kill anyone. Like with.
Hang on like a
Here,
motherfucker.
Johnny.
This
Only there's one brake, one throttle.
this throttle is so touchy.
Okay,
When you
but Johnny,
turn it,
It's done. You're gone.
Okay.
Angle is awesome, bro.
It's crazy.
You awesome.
Okay, you gotta get me off this right now because I got a whole
I want to buy one.
Let me see.
Hey,
I
Logan's
want
turn.
that.
It's Logan's turn.
Okay, you gotta turn
Dude,
it
how
on
much
me,
you
Owen.
gonna sell that?
Other way. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Okay. All right. Someone need a
All right, let's get to some drifting now. I'm gonna go to my buddy Steve. He's already rode this once. By ear.
Gotta come up with a name for this.
How you been?
Good.
Good. All right. How you been?
Good, real good. This
All
is
right.
sweet.
So we're finishing this little trike video here. This is my buddy. This is my neighbor.
I'm Steve.
Yeah, he's awesome. He actually just is an awesome guy. You can't find guys like these. So hey, you want to do like a test run before we put on
Yeah, let's do it.
these PVCs? Because when you put on those PVCs, oh no, hit that button.
Okay.
Be careful with the throttle.
Yep.
And tell me what you think about it. Go ahead.
Oh yeah.
Hello.
The fact that it's just so instant. I mean,
Oh shit.
That sound you're
Holy
hearing is the
crap.
tires slipping because they're cold.
All right, man. He took off, didn't he?
this thing is insane.
Yeah, you actually took off pretty good, dude. Holy moly. You actually take off pretty good. I give you some props because that takes some kahunas.
What's the top speed you thinking?
37 miles an hour, but
I figure it was 30 something. I mean,
Yeah.
being 4 inches off the ground.
37. I have gear ratio to go 55. Hey, what do you want to say? You want to put some PVCs on this and see what we could do?
Let's try it.
All right. All right, now we put on the PVCs.
Yep.
And we still got the great guy named Steve here. And he's never done this, right? You never
No,
done?
never. I'm excited
So
to try it.
let's see what he could do with the PVCs. Go ahead. This thing's bad. It's like, yeah, ice, exactly. You don't need much. Very little. Woo!
Steve gets it down
There
pretty
you go.
quick.
He knows what's up. He knows what's up. Yeah, man, you got it good. Yeah.
This is Steve's second attempt at the PVCs.
I just want to give a quick background on Steve. He is so awesome. He reminds me of myself so much because like we're like both deadly into motorcycles, meaning like we're just ruthless. But this guy grew up at 4 years old riding a dirt bike, and also his first street bike was at 16 years old. He eventually now he rides Jeeps, or I should say he drives. And these Jeeps he drives are insane. You should see this guy driving Jeeps. Anyway, just a spectacular guy, and I'm so thankful to know him. Great guy.
Maybe? Yeah? Oh man, he's tipping on me. Do you see that? Wow.
All right, so we're at the end of the Trike video, but I noticed there was some performance gains to accomplish here. With the gear ratio, at first, it was 6-to-1. I felt this motor had so much more power that we could gear this taller and get more linear power throughout the whole power band. So what I did is I made a custom sprocket here so I could switch back to the old gear ratio, and I made a new gear ratio so it's geared taller. This gear ratio is 4.8-to-1 versus 6-to-1. That made actually a huge improvement, and I have Excel graphs and a test drive we're gonna go look at right now.
All right, guys, so what I want to get you guys familiar with is the graphs, so we don't have to hop into something right now. If you look at the top right here, that's my controller feeding back to my iPhone Bluetooth to give all the data. The top of it is the kilowatts, the right of that is RPM, and so forth down. You got amps and voltage and all the stuff you need. If you look at the very bottom left screen, that's mile per hour. That's from the GoPro GPS, which is pretty accurate. And then I'll put a stopwatch on the bottom right in a second here to get the data timed. Let's take a look right now of the testing. All right, first run, baseline, 360 phase amp, 6-to-1 gear ratio. Zero to 3 seconds and 36 miles per hour. RPM, 7,400. Watts, 17,500 watts. Peak. Second run, 530 phase amps, same gear ratio, 6-to-1. Zero to 3 seconds, 36 miles per hour. RPM, 7,400. 23,500 watts. Third run, 530 phase amps, change the gear ratio to 4.8-to-1. Zero to 3 seconds and 43 miles per hour. RPM, 7,400. Watts peak, 27,000 watts. Now, if you want to see more in detail of these graphs side by side, stick to the very end of the video.
Don't forget to watch the 4-speed electric dirt bike. I have that video out. And also, don't forget this classic dual drive standing scooter hub motor design, all out of aluminum. This one is pretty popular. And the new one that will be out after this video, which will be coming soon, is the electric mini bike. Look at this thing. This thing is so low to the ground. Big tires, nice fat tires, nice huge motor, custom box. It goes 43 miles per hour, and it has a jack shaft system. So there's the motor drive, and then it comes over here. That video is next. But let's look at the future. My last video. Don't mind the gardener in the background. It's my wife. Hey, let's look at the last video ever. Aluminum street scooter. fat tire, mini fat tire. Look at this thing. It's just so practical. This thing was made to be affordable and practical, something to go to school or to the grocery store. All out of aluminum. It's super lightweight. I mean, you can just pick this thing up with your hand. And it's so nicely designed here. I gotta clean up all the welds still and paint it, obviously. But, oh man, this thing's awesome. All right, thank you for watching. Bye.
All right, so we did some data. Sorry if my voice is messed up. I actually have a cough, unfortunately. Sorry.
I'm also sorry about my hair too.
I did some data at the end of the Trike video, as I already stated, and I have a lot of cool information on Excel graphs here to show you. The first one is mile per hour, and what I ended up doing is just doing a 0 to 3 seconds mark, and that will give us a good feedback on what we can achieve. So this is the first bottom line baseline. What the whole video that you saw, by the way, was playing with all those guys. They were only playing with half amps in the controller, so I didn't feel it was necessary to break something or maybe not know the limits yet. So I took it down to 360 phase amps. That controller peaks out at 530, and it comes stock 530, but I dropped it down to 360, and everyone was awesome. I mean, they loved the thing, but I mean, they were a little drunk, so I felt 360 was probably necessary. Phase amps. I just wanted to clarify, when I say double the phase amps or half the phase amps, I'm referring to 360 phase amps versus 530 phase amps. Sorry, I know that the mathematics isn't double or half. It's just easier for me to state out that way. Anyways, look at, so 0 to 3 seconds, 36 miles per hour was the top speed it reached. It probably reached its top speed at 2.9 seconds, just so you know. So anyway, that's what it does at gear ratio 6:1, the original gear ratio, and half pretty much amps of the controller, as I say 360. Now let's take a look at what happens when you just say you keep the same gear ratio, but we just double the amps, say the 530. Well, top speed's never going to change because we're not changing the gear ratio, right? And we're not changing the kV of the motor, and we're not changing the voltage. So top speed is going to stay the same, 36 miles per hour. But if you do look at when it reached its top speed, was quicker. So it reached its top speed probably at 2.7. So is it worth it? I don't know. Tell you the truth, I would say leave it at half amps, because who's going to know a 0.2 seconds difference of a top speed, right? And you save a lot of heat on the controller, and you save a lot of wear and tear. So it just shows you that you don't maybe need to max out your controllers with this graph. Now let's take a look what happens when we change the gear ratio and keep the phase amps 530 max. I mean, that's what we're talking. So that might be where you need to use that 530 phase amps to pull that taller gear ratio and get 43 miles per hour. Now, I think it actually goes to 45, but we're just going to 0.3 seconds. So here's where 43 is. If you go to right around here, it's about, yeah, it does go to 45. The interesting thing though that I find is normally when anything gas powered or anything that I've been aware of, when you gear it taller, you normally lose a little bit at the bottom end and you gain at the top end. Right here is 100% linear power all the way through its power band. There's no dips, there's no loss, it's just complete gain. So that is a great accomplishment for just gearing it taller. It's all we did. And I had that a feeling because the motor had just so much torque. That's the difference between electric and gas, in my opinion. There's so much torque, it could pull through those gear ratios taller. Where I'm not hating on gas, trust me, gas is awesome. Gas might need more RPM or just a bigger displacement to pull through those gears, where electric could do it with a smaller motor, just has torque to get through them. The other question might be is, how come I don't have a 360 phase amps on a 4.8 to 1 gear ratio? I actually do. The data kind of was smushed, and the performance I got was so minimal. It was mostly the green line here, only 2 miles an hour faster. So now let's look at the next graph, which will be RPM. Now RPM doesn't really change. The RPM of the motor is going to be the RPM of the motor at the max, because again, voltage didn't change, kV didn't change. So let's look at the first one. Okay, so maxes out around 77,400 RPM, which is pretty good. So I overvolt these motors. Just so you know, these motors are 72 volt motors. I pump in 110 volts. It's 120, but it never stays. You know, you lose 100, you come down to 110 immediately. But I check the heat out. I have a sensor temperature. I check the heat out. That's why I did 360 phase amps, because technically higher voltage is more efficient as long as you lower the phase amps or the current, which is the same thing. All right, let's look at when you double it up. So here's the interesting thing. I find this really interesting. When you double the phase amps on the same gear ratio, 6-to-1. So the first one was 6-to-1 gear ratio, 360 phase amps. The second graph, the green one, is 530 phase amps, 6-to-1. Nothing's changed other than the phase amps. Look at the RPM. Wow. So it's kind of like, you had an extra horse. You know what I mean? You got like an extra bull pulling you on your wagon, because you could get there. You get your momentum, I guess, going a little further, which therefore your RPM got to climb higher. I don't know if that makes sense, but if you look at these dips, there's a dip, there's a dip, there's a dip, there's a dip. I mean, there's a dip, there's a dip. It almost is kind of cool to see it. Now, what happens when we change a gear ratio? We keep 530 phase amps, but we change a gear ratio to 4.8. Well, the green, the 530 6-to-1 beat RPM here climbing, but the blue, which is the max, which is the 4.8-to-1, crushed it at top speed, but the RPM doesn't show that here, which is this is actually a very confusing graph. If your mile per hour is going so fast here with the blue, your RPM didn't need to be there yet, because your gear ratio was taller. So that's what I'm seeing in my head. So the blue, the gear ratio is taller. We're still climbing faster speed because we have a taller gear ratio, which we didn't reach our RPM because the other gear ratio was lower. So that's probably what we're seeing. And if you've got these dips, I mean, there's a dip, it's pretty accurate. And then there's a dip and there's a dip. Look at that. And then you have your max RPM, but the blue had the max mile per hour. So that's kind of interesting. I like that graph. All right, let's move on to the kilowatts. The most important one I like. Everyone wants to see this. So, all right. So this is the first baseline run. 360 phase amps, 6-to-1. Nothing. This is the baseline. And at max pull, we pulled 17,500 watts. Great, right? I mean, these motors are rated at 4,000 watts, and the company says they're, I think, maybe 12,000 watt mat peak, but I proved them wrong here. All right, so, well, I overvolted it though too. What happens when we double the phase amps to 530, keep the same gear ratio? Wow. So look at that. Boom, boom, boom. All those dips are pretty good, right? I mean, they're pretty accurate. So we got 23,500 watts. Pretty remarkable though. The interesting thing though I find in my head is that's a lot of power wasted for performance that we saw on the graph didn't show. How much acceleration did we gain? What, a 0.2 seconds on top speed? Not even saying throughout the whole. It'd be cool to see a drag race if we had side by sides of these two, because I bet you couldn't even tell. But we are drawing this much more kilowatts, wasting that much more energy on maybe not doing much more other than showing us what the motor can do, which causes heat, which causes wear and tear. So this is all interesting to me. But let's take a look at this one's. This is my favorite because I just love this, because it shows like these motors are just so capable of everything. What happens when we keep the 530 phase amps, but we change the gear ratio? So think about it. We're going to change the gear ratio taller to 4.8-to-1. What's that going to do? It's going to make more load, right? So that's going to cause more current. Wow. What a difference. I mean, we're pulling 27 kilowatts. And you can see the peak of it. They all dip right where they're supposed to dip because they're relative, right? And then boom. And now this one makes sense to me because we did gain a lot. We 10 horsepower or 10 miles per hour, whatever. So the question is I actually did do a test with this at 360 phase amps, and it wasn't able to perform as good, and I didn't get the data calculated as well. So I just kept it at 530 amps with the 4:1 or 4.1 to 1. So basically, I think this at 360 was something around this green mark. So it does show that's where basically what I'm trying to say is that's where you need your amps, is when you have a taller gear ratio, when you have a load under stress, like when you have something it needs to pull through. Now those phase amps matter, going from 360 to 530. Because before, on just the 6-to-1 gear ratio, which is like a super first gear, low first gear, amps won't matter because it's just so low. But when we actually get to like a third gear, 4.1 to 1, now amps matter as far as what you're trying to do with your controller. So that's what this shows. And what's remarkable about this is all this is relative watts, because this shows voltage sag as load is under, and it will calculate when the current is coming in, the voltage is sagging, and give us our kilowatt reading. Most people don't do that. I haven't done that in all my previous videos, so I've always just times my bus bar current times my voltage and got some number that was probably higher than normal. But that's just YouTube, right? You do that. Here is actually accurate. This is when the voltage, when you're under load, the voltage is going to go low. Your amps are going to come up really high at the momentum, trying to get something moving, right? The load. Your amps are going to go up high. Your voltage is going to sag. And then once you get that momentum rolling, the amps are going to come back down, and the voltage is going to come slightly up again. And that's just how it works. But that's accurate. This is accurate because it's all calculated. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you for watching.